If you're like me, you probably feel like you have seen every horror movie and every thriller movie that's ever been made. But I'm willing to bet that you have never seen this one, and I'll go a step farther. I bet you've never even heard of it. So let's talk about it. A mute makeup artist working on a slasher movie being shot in Moscow is locked in the studio after hours. While there, she witnesses a brutal murder and must escape. Or does she? The movie is called Mute Witness, and for the life of me, I have never heard anybody else talk about this film. I basically live on YouTube. I watch other reviewers, I watch those lists about recommendations, at least I used to. I have never heard a single person talk about this film, and it is criminal because, in my opinion, this is one of the best thrillers of the 90s and one of the most underrated thrillers ever if you're into this sort of thing. This is kind of a throwback to the Hitchcock era. It is very reminiscent of that style of film, kind of a blend of giallo at points as well. Beautifully shot film, very tense, very suspenseful, and it follows this main character named Billy, who is a mute, and she works on a horror movie set where they film snuff B-movies, which is another layer within a layer. If you're a fan of horror movies like me, whenever you put a movie set in a horror movie, it's another thumbs up. But one night after she gets off of the set, she's going to have dinner at the director's house with her friend who's dating him, and she stops by the studio to pick up a costume. And while she's picking up the costume, she gets locked in the studio and she stumbles upon people filming a real snuff film where it feels like they're actually murdering a girl. And you are thrown into a web of mysteries of whether or not this actually happened, who's at fault. This is one of the most oddly original and cohesive thrillers that nobody ever mentions, which is one of my main selling points. If you're somebody who questions logic in movies, you think movies, they cut corners, you have to suspend disbelief. This is one of the smartest thrillers I have seen in ages when it comes to just characters making smart decisions. No real loopholes in the plot, the motivations make sense. This is just a tightly wrapped story that's nice and cohesive, start to finish, suspenseful, has all of the elements of a tense thriller. There's plot twists along the way that are just very enjoyable and hard to predict. And I cannot say this enough. What I think really truly sets this movie apart from a lot of thrillers is when you introduce more plot twists and more side characters and everything starts wrapping together, usually the threads can come undone. This movie excels. The more stuff they add, the more layers, the smarter it gets. Things that characters did earlier in the movie come back to matter later in the movie. Some jokes that are done in the first act come back in serious nature in the second to be an effective method of escaping. This movie is also oddly comedic, much like some of Hitchcock movies where they have injected comedy into the scenes to relieve that tension. There's one character in specific, he's actually director of the horror movie that Billy's helping to work on, and he's basically the comic relief of this movie, but I think he is effective. I think almost all of his scenes elicit at least a smirk. By the end of the movie, he does really grow on you as an audience member, and you think he does fit in, because at first you might question how this guy fits into such a suspenseful movie. The whole thing, again, wraps up very nicely, which a lot of thrillers drop the ball on. This is not one of them. This movie came out in the 90s, but I think it feels purposely older than that, like a 70s or 80s movie. Again, throwback to Hitchcock era, giallos, murder mystery, whodunits, can our main character survive a tense situation? And the majority of this movie falls solely on the shoulders of our main character, Billy, who is played by Marina Zadina, and I think she does a fabulous job. One of the better main character final girls of this era. Sadly never mentioned, and I can't name any of her other work because I think this movie just flew so under the radar. This movie also has a couple of creative choices relating to our main character being mute that are just so cool, and they taught me something, again, about the limitations of that lifestyle, but also the creativity people like that go through. There were a couple of scenes in this film where the main character utilizes doing things like making phone calls and things I never really thought about. But again, very creative, which makes all of these characters feel very logical. And again, you want to root for them even more because they're not a dumbass. So for the majority of the movie to follow a mute character and to have a cohesive narrative surrounding that, very impressive, especially since this takes place in Moscow. There was a lot of Russian in this without subtitles, which at the time of watching, I thought was very purposeful because you don't really need to know what they're saying to make out the gist of their actions and why they're doing what they're doing. You can tell through body language and the situation it comes out in, which is just another small detail this movie is really smart at, injecting more mystery and suspense into what the characters are saying. When you have the mute character telling somebody about a crime they think was committed, and you have the Russian police talking to the suspects in Russian, you don't know what they're saying. You kind of want to argue on the mute's behalf, but you can't make out what anybody's saying. By withholding information, it makes all of the things that are going on a lot more suspenseful because you don't know what anybody's saying specifically, and you don't know the motive behind why they're saying it. But where this movie really excels, especially in the first act, this movie is crazy suspenseful, so tense. If you're a fan of these chamber piece bottleneck mysteries where you have a character trapped in a location, people are trying to find them. Character has to get out, they have to make smart decisions. It's like a cat and mouse thing. This movie is one of the best thrillers when it comes to doing that. And the follow-up to what happens in the first act, you get twist after twist until it kind of morphs into a different movie, but one I think is very, very effective. And another thing this movie does really smart is it's contrasting the fake film she thinks she saw with the fake film they're actually making on the set, the B horror movie. As the viewer, you also are kind of undergoing a mystery of trying to determine what's real, what's not. Did she see a real thing? Did she not see a real thing? And it just keeps playing with your imagination of what you saw. Is it real? Is it not? And I think it's very creative as a choice for any mystery that as the audience member, you're not quite sure what you're seeing either, along with the main character. As a horror movie fan, I like to consider us all junkies. We will sift through the trash, 40 of these movies to find one hidden gem. That's the fix we are going for. And if you're somebody who is looking for their next fix, give Mute Witness a watch. I feel like nobody knows of this movie. Nobody talks about this movie. But if you are a fan of murder mysteries, you're a fan of Hitchcock movies, action at points, comedy at other points, give this movie a look. I do not think you will be disappointed. I think this movie is one of the biggest hidden gems, underrated films ever made, to be honest. So if anyone here has managed to see this movie, I would be oddly surprised. But if you have, comment down below, let me know what you think of it, or what your most criminally underrated little thriller is. Like, comment, subscribe, join me down below for more movie reviews and hidden gems, but I will see you in the next review.